Hello viewers, welcome to one more edition of MynaCare Positive Life series. In this series, we identify a subject, go to a competent person and take his feedback, only to empower our viewers. Cancer is a menace and we all know it. We also know that cancer is treatable. Most of the times it is self-inflicted, and criticality lies in identifying cancer much before it becomes a menace. Today we have come to Rajiv Gandhi Cancer Institute and Research Center to talk to Dr. Anurag Mehta. He's a director out here and he's heading the Department of Lab and Transfusion Services. We will talk to him and try to know from him what are the treatments which are there, how it is diagnosed, and what are the research facilities which are here, and what research is going on in today's day and age. Dr. Mehta, thank you for your time. We know that cancer is a dangerous menace to our society, to people at large, but we also know that it's treatable. But even before identification, your role becomes very critical in doing an analysis of what the cancer thing is. So today we are here to know from you in details of how you identify the danger levels and what are the research which is going on in this field and how people can feel very positive from the kind of work that is going on and feel safe about cancer. So my first question to you, doctor, is what is oncopathology, which is a specialty area for you, and what is the role it plays in management of cancer?
So oncopathology is basically the practice of pathology in relation to cancer management, and it encompasses the activities like first diagnosing the cancer, then finding out the extent of the cancer, finding out whether a surgery that has been performed to remove the cancer has been complete or is an incomplete surgery and a second look surgery is required. The practice of oncopathology also helps in monitoring the response to the therapy, and in the present era also to identify targets for what is known as a precision medicine. Now we've so far been practicing the cancer treatment in the form of one shoe fits all, but the emphasis from one shoe fits all is now shifting to finding out specific targets in an individual cancer and engaging those targets. And the modern role of pathology is in identification of these targets which can be engaged successfully. So it is a very broad group of activities. It involves making the first diagnosis, to continuously monitoring, to finding out whenever the recurrence occurs, and finding out the new targets for engagement in cancer treatment.
So it primarily, oncopathology enables you to identify or pinpoint A treatment, B minimizing the effect of treatment over the whole body.
So first is, the first and foremost is making the right diagnosis. A diagnosis with which the physicians and surgeons can work.
Right.
Because without a diagnosis, no treatment can be delivered. And then second, it also helps in continuously monitoring the response through the treatment.
Right.
And then finally, in case the disease in an unfortunate individual recurs, in making the diagnosis second time, and if it is advanced, then finding out the new modalities of treatment.
Doctor, over the years, India, the landscape of India in terms of the healthcare services have improved manifold. And you are possibly one person who has worked abroad, worked in India, and had spent a considerable time working in these places. What significant changes you see in pathological services as far as cancer treatment is concerned?
Oh, I see enormous amount of advancement. Pathology as it was being practiced 30 years back was individual driven, and the level of evidences which were gathered to make a diagnosis were minimal. Then in the intervening 25-30 years, there was initially the introduction of immunohistochemistry, which started enabling the pathologist to gather some evidences in support of the diagnosis. And in the recent past, let's say decade or about a decade, a decade, what has actually happened is that now we are gathering more and more evidences to support diagnosis through the DNA and RNA or the genetic makeup of the cancer cells. So in 30 years or 25 years, what I have seen that from a practice which was completely subjective to a practice which has now become very robust, supported by very, very robust evidences. So that is a major change that I have seen in the past 25 years. And I have also seen this, that the expense of this practice is increasing from a few centers to several centers. So if we talk about the city of Delhi, now these levels of evidences are getting gathered by all pathology set up in the city, which was not the case, let's say, about 7, 8 or 10 years back. So the expense has increased and the depth of evidence collection has increased.
Doctor, at this point in time, I would like to ask you two related questions. One is related to the kind of data that you collect. I mean, if so many centers are treating patients and they are doing tests, there's a lot of data which is being generated. So do you find any correlation between the kind of cancer with the kind of lifestyle, maybe the demography of the person? Is it possible to predict something in those lines?
Yeah, I think the cancer has a strong relationship with the lifestyle and the dietary practices. So it is believed that about 30% of the cancers are associated with dietary practices, and a fairly large number are also associated with lifestyle practices, including, for example, betel chewing, smoking, exposure to insecticide, pesticides, heavy use of fertilizers for intensive farming has also been associated with increased rates of cancer in those communities. So I agree with you that the lifestyle and the dietary practice contribute majorly to development of cancer. But there will be several cases where it will not be possible to really pinpoint what has been the cause of development of cancer in that particular individual.
Okay. The whole objective is to preempt cancer. So if we have some intelligence in terms of this kind of lifestyle leads to this kind of cancer, you can actually train people, make them aware of that lifestyle and urge them to change it. I mean, if we are in a situation where you were telling that 95% of the cancer is acquired, is it possible to actually train people?
Well, in some situations are probably, you can't really do much. It's a large country and you have to feed 120 million people. So you have to participate in intensive farming. One will be using insecticides and fertilizers. So that situation as of now looks not addressable. But there are others, for example, smoking, for example, betel quid chewing, for example, using tobacco, for example, obesity, for example, large use of dairy products. So these are for example, use of smoked meat. So these are the risk factors which can be easily avoided, and obviously if we can actually practice good lifestyle, healthy dietary practices, have a balanced food, and there are certain foods which are actually protective against cancers. For example, the use of turmeric, broccoli, green leafy vegetables, many of them have anti-carcinogenic properties. So if there's a right mix of the right kind of a food, that can also not just preclude the development of cancer because of bad dietary habits, but also in way prevent the occurrence of cancer because there are anti-carcinogenic elements present in these foods.
Right. Doctor, how does India fare today in terms of research base? I mean, we have been importing medical technology, we have been importing medicines for a long time. So over the last 10, 12 years, how do you see research and indigenous treatment, medicines coming into this field of treatment?
I think the desire is there. There's a lot of desire in the young medical community to indulge in research and find own answers. But I think probably the doctors are too busy. The establishments don't exist in the hospital for research. The funding is not readily available. And the funding is only available in certain apical institutions in the country.
Right.
So the research has truly not spread, and we still rely largely on the Western data for treatment, prevention, screening of our population.
Right. Doctor, you also specialize in blood transfusion. We would like to know what kind of people, treatment, and what kind of cancer would require blood transfusion.
Well, any cancer can require blood transfusion because there are those cancers which are actually related to the blood formation as leukemias, etc., where blood will be required because you have to replenish the blood which is not being manufactured by the bone marrow. But in any other cancer where you're using chemotherapy and the bone marrow, which is the site where the blood is manufactured, is suppressed.
Right.
So you have to really support the patient through the chemotherapy program by repeatedly giving them blood transfusion. Or not always, but most of the time one tends to build up the marrow to make the blood. But there are several occasions when the marrow fails to make up between the 2 cycles of chemotherapy, and then you need to support these patients with blood transfusion.
So, in the areas of research is one area that I would like to go back again and again. Cancer treatment is primarily very costly. Yes, it is linked to the stage of the cancer, and there is a lot of talks and discussion going on in terms of availability of low-cost medicine and availability of low-cost technology and equipments. Where is India today? I want to know it from a practitioner. Where is India today? I mean, there are talks which are going on, but in reality, what is the scene?
Well, in terms of pharmacotherapy, in terms of using drugs to treat cancer, there are lots of generic alternatives available to innovation molecules, which are relatively cheap, at times tenfold cheaper than the innovation molecule. So in terms of pharmacotherapy, India has done well. The pharmaceutical industry has really come up with the answers to costly drugs by providing cheaper and effective alternatives. But in terms of developing the equipment, in terms of developing the diagnostic technologies, in terms of developing the machines for radiation, for machines for imaging, there's very little that has happened in this country.
So we can send our equipments to Mars, but we have still not shown much effort in treating people in terms of low-cost equipment and technology.
No, there is very little indigenous manufacturing of medical equipment of quality, and especially in fields of oncology, the contribution of the indigenous industry is minimal.
Right. That's the sad bit, doctor. I wish there is some research going on in terms of creating some vaccine, one shot, which prevents carcinogens to go beyond control. Is there anything of that sort?
I will think there's one effective answer, which is the HPV vaccine I know of. The HPV, human papilloma virus, is responsible for carcinoma cervix, which till recently has been the #1 problem of the Indian women, that most common or most frequently occurring cancer. And if you can actually immunize the girls in between the age of 15 to 25, then you can virtually negate the carcinoma cervix or completely root it out from the society. So that's one where the prevention has happened because of by using, or prevention can occur, it hasn't happened, can happen by universal usage of HPV vaccine. But I don't know of any other example. In the literature, you will find that several vaccines are being tried to treat cancer as a part of the immunotherapy, but the success has been eluding us so far.
Right. Doctor, again, riding on what you said, research, research and data. This becomes very critical to create, hypotheses and test those hypotheses and possibly move towards vaccination. Indian government, are they, supporting people like you who have so much of experience to work towards consciously work towards creating such vaccines, creating some test cases which can be, taken multifold among people?
I will not say that that is not the intent of the administration or the government. Probably the intent is there, but maybe we work in a very fragmented way. The various agencies are unable to coordinate and get the right answers and raise the right questions first and then get the right answers. Probably I see that as a problem, the problem of a coordination, amalgamation, and the problem of working together, raising the right questions and trying to answer the right way. I think that's the problem.
Doctor, thank you for your time. But before I let you go, I would like to hear, on behalf of my viewers, some words from you that you would like to tell our viewers in terms of care, in terms of what they need to do to prevent themselves or people around them from this menace called cancer.
So, I will have two messages. Live a healthy lifestyle. Quit smoking if you are smoking. If you are chewing tobacco or using tobacco in any form, give it up. Control your weight. Obesity is a very serious cause of several cancers. And then, the cancers are really asymptomatic. So whatever programs are for screening are available, make use of those programs for screening and early detection of cancer, and be aware of the certain symptoms which actually happen with cancer, though the symptoms with cancers are very few, early cancers when it is most treatable, but be aware of them. For example, a cough which is persisting, unprovoked weight of loss, night sweats, any breach which happens in a skin, any discoloration of the skin. So these are a few of the things, or bleeding per rectum, or bringing out blood-stained sputum. So whenever you have these kind of symptoms, don't ignore them. Go and consult your doctor. Maybe your cancer will get detected early, and early detection of a cancer can lead to cure of a cancer.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time. On behalf of our viewers, really appreciate your input, and we look forward to more such interactions in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.